So we will get it started right away. Good day, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. I think we have participants joining us from Cameroon, from Italy, USA, and Uganda and Qatar, Doha. We would hear a bit from everyone shortly. So welcome to the program. I appreciate everyone joining on time. We have quite an agenda to get through today. So I'll just do quick introductions, 5 minutes, give everyone a chance to say something or the other about yourselves. So the speakers and the schools, we'll need one person from each school to say a few words about the school to the rest of the audience. And then I will present a bit about ISNAD-Africa and the objectives of the program. Then we would, I will hand over to Mrs. Maureen Ferry to introduce to us the Urban Engineers Framework, which we had kind of given a brief introduction prior to the schools to as a kind of a foundation, background information to use in their group exercise. Afterwards, we'll proceed to presentation of the students' exercise. We will start with Mada International College in Yaoundé. So you go first, and afterwards will be followed by URDT Girls School. Before URDT starts, of course, we can give a chance for Mrs. Maureen to give a feedback, and any other person has a comment or feedback on Mada's presentation. Then URDT goes next, and we also give their feedback, and then proceed to presentation by Mrs. Stephanie that's joined us here from the US and Colorado. And we'll have the Q&A session, open floor for questions. We're particularly interested in any questions coming from the schools, the students, or the teachers. Then we'll close and get feedback from the students. It would be good to have your comments on what you have found interesting, what you have learned from the program, any kind of benefit you have seen this has given to you. We'll just have 5 minutes roundtable for a few people to give their comments, and then we close the webinar. So, proceeding, brief introduction of myself. I think I've been in touch with most of you throughout. So my name is Mada Christie Okoro. I'm Manager Administration for ISNAD-Africa. I've been working 6 years in the renewable energy industry, particularly in solar and wind energy. And I've been serving with the management team of ISNAD-Africa for the past 2.5, 3 years. But full-time, almost full-time, 2 years, I think. And mostly responsible for a lot of the administrative topics in our organization, and also the communications unit and environmental education program, which we are attending today. So I'm going to hand over to Doyin to say a few words, and then Maureen and Stephanie can as well tell us a little bit about themselves before we proceed.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for coming, and thanks to our facilitators and speakers. We're very appreciative of the efforts of the schools, the effort they have put together to support the students in their exercises. We believe this will be of great benefit to them. Also, I'm Adedoyin Adeleke, and I happen to be the founder and executive director of ISNAD-Africa. On the other side, I'm also on a PhD study in Milan. So ISNAD-Africa is based in Nigeria, but coordinated from all over the world, in Canada, in the US, in Italy. So it's good to have you here. And it's good to see the faces of the students, particularly from Mada School, that I met some months ago when I was in Cameroon with our colleague, Victoria. Is Victoria online? Okay. So thank you very much. I hope that this will be a fruitful engagement and very impactful. Thank you.
Thank you, Doyin. Maureen? Oh, you're muted. Let me unmute you. Okay, go on.
Oh, I think you muted. Yeah, because I just turning off my email is buzzing. So, Hi. Thank you. My name is Maureen Ferry. I'm an architect, and I develop youth programs to engage youth with the built environment so that we can incorporate ideas about sustainability and resiliency. And I would like to say I was contacted by ISNAD through NAAEE, which is the North American Association of Environmental Educators. And I'm very excited that you reached out, and I enjoyed speaking with students' teachers about a month and a half ago, and I'm really excited to hear what they have to present. So thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you, Maureen, for participating. We're happy to have you here. Stephanie?
Good morning. Hello. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we hear you clearly.
Okay, thank you. I'm so happy to be here. My name is Stephanie Doby. I live in Boulder, Colorado in the US. And it's morning here. I woke up to a couple inches of snow on the ground. So winter is in full force. I want to thank you so much for inviting me to participate. I'm a teacher and also an education consultant. I became interested, I'm going to be talking today about agriculture, and I became interested in that about 15 years ago. But recently, I became interested in agriculture as a solution for climate change. So I'm excited to share what I have learned about that with you, and hopefully it is helpful in your studies. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Stephanie. We appreciate having you here. So we would proceed to the schools. Can we have someone from Mada International College introduce the audience there, the participants there quickly?
I get
We can hear you, yes.
Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. We are Mada International College. We are situated in Africa. Geographically, we are in West Africa, and politically, we are in the Central Africa. We are found in Cameroon, precisely at Kagadi. And today, our learners are going to do a presentation focused on green city. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you very much. We have URDT School in Uganda.
Yes, possibly Hillary will come in at a later time when his connections get better. But I can speak briefly for URDT Girls School. URDT stands for Uganda Rural Development and Training Program. We have one girls' school, and there are two other schools which are mixed, boys and girls. The other two schools, one is a secondary school, O-level, Form 1 up to Form 4. The other one is a primary school, P1 up to P7. It's a community school. And this one, the girls' school, single sex, is from P5 to P7, that's the primary section, and S1 to S4 O-level, and S4, S5 to S6, that is the advanced level. And for all these schools, we support children who are disadvantaged, those who cannot afford education on their own. Maybe they are orphaned or their parents are disadvantaged economically in one way or the other. So the school moves around in communities, selecting one child per household, and this must be a girl for URDT Girls School. These are brought and given first-class education, and from URDT Girls School, they either can join the URDT Institute, which is a vocational college, or they can join the African Rural University, which is also a university for only girls, for only women. The educational approach here at URDT Girls School is a two-generational approach, in a way that a child, a pupil or a student is taught alongside the parents. So on many occasions, parents are invited to school and they sit in class and learn with their kids. And mainly what they're learning, these are processes of creating the visionary approach. The visionary approach is all about focusing on what you want, then you lay strategies and agree on who will be accountable for everything, and you set dates, due dates when you want to accomplish every result. So it's based on that development approach. And I don't know what I can add. It is located in Kagadi. Kagadi is in midwestern Uganda. I work for the university. I'm not a staff at the school, but I work for the university. So we are waiting for these kids to come from the primary and the secondary school to join us at the university, then we help them at that level. I don't know if I don't know if they are around. I don't seem to see them.
I can see them, so I think that we can proceed as well. So thank you very much, Charles, for giving us very good background about URDT. Hopefully we hear their presentation later. I can see Mr. Hillary is dialed in from that location. So I'll be giving very briefly corporate presentation about ISNAD-Africa. So ISNAD-Africa, we are really committed to raising global multi-stakeholder support for clean energy transition and climate resilience in Africa. And through various initiatives, we aim to facilitate collaborations and partnerships for knowledge transfer to build human capacity by raising a new generation of sustainable energy, environment, and climate experts in Africa. We aim to as well increase environmental literacy among various groups in African countries, stimulate and promote innovation and networking in our areas of focus, which is sustainable energy, that's renewable energy, energy efficiency, energy access, in the environment, and climate change. One of other things that we aim to do is to bridge the gap between education, research, and practice in our thematic areas. Very quickly, we can see our organizational structure. Internally, we have a board of trustees. We have an advisory board as well, management team. So we have our executive director, our programs manager, and the administration. And then we have several teams working as well to help us push our activities and our mission, volunteers from different countries across the world. We also have a very global network of partners, UNFCCC, CTCN, Power for All, a number of support organizations like SIPSEM, the Clean Energy Solutions Center, WWF Africa, the University of Ibadan Center for Petroleum, Energy Economics and Law in Nigeria, and UNESCO Chair for Sustainable Energy Energy for Sustainable Development in Italy, among others. And some of the beneficiaries of our programs are the focus in Africa. So we have the university students who are participating in our Mentoring for Research program, coming from 38 universities in 17 countries on the continent. Then we have our focus on secondary school students, as we see today, the environmental education program. And there are other plans as well to involve policymakers, professionals in other groups as well. This is this quote here: "Africa is too rich to be poor." That is Didoin's favorite quote, as he emphasizes a lot of times that Africa is too rich to be poor. We have a lot of natural resources, mineral resources, renewable energy resources, even human resources, and we believe that we could do a whole lot more with the resources we have to develop the continent. And one of the key issues that, in spite of all these resources, we are suffering from energy poverty, and there's really a strong link between energy poverty and low development index. And one of the things we look at is how can we utilize the resources, how can we build human capacity in order to bridge this gap. Because we see Sub-Saharan Africa, for example, is the most electricity poor region in the world. And this should not be, if we consider all the resources that we have at our disposal. And hydro, solar, geothermal, wind, in addition to that's the renewable resources, in addition to all the other mineral resources. And one of the other one focus that we look at, or what we have identified that is a big gap that can be bridged, is in teaching and research. We need to build up our teaching and research capability, impact knowledge and skills to the young people in the continent, to build up activity to solve our own opportunity to be the one to take on our challenges, build our vision, and build the future that we want to see on the continent. Very briefly, we can see here our teams. We have a whole number of us here. On the left is the administration team, and the other on the right is the program associate. So on the left, we have a lot of volunteers joining us from different countries: Egypt, France, Australia, Cameroon. We have Victorine here, who's in Cameroon, that's been supporting us in putting together this program on the ground. Appreciate that a lot. And communications associates as well on the team, who write different articles addressing core issues in our thematic areas with a focus on Africa. And then we have to the right as well our program associates that support our mentoring for research program. I think probably you've heard about this before, where we connect scholars in Africa doing master or PhD thesis in our thematic areas in any discipline. So whether you're coming from finance or you're coming from the sciences or engineering, you can do research in topics related to sustainable energy, environmental, climate change, and we connect them with mentors across the globe who, from professionals from different organizations, who supplement the supervision they receive from their supervisors at their universities, to be able to support their research, to bring it to high standards, to bring in their expertise on different fields, and also to enable them publish their work, and so many other benefits they get, for example, participation in conferences, and also scholarship to attend programs. And for what we have today, focusing on the environmental education program really is to, we know that a lot of schools already have some environmental topics in their subjects, and what we're doing here is to really bring up an additional perspective to enable young secondary school students to facilitate critical thinking and come up with solutions to environmental challenges they observe in their own communities, to enlighten the students, inspire them for career environmental sustainability, which could be whether in energy or climate or research or industry, whatever discipline, because we notice that really skills gap is there's a big high skills gap in Africa, even though there's a whole lot of jobs booming across in the industry or in the sustainability field, whether energy or environment, but we need to raise more people who will take on careers in this field. Last year, we had the program, a career workshop with students, 48 students from South Africa and Nigeria. And we also have in our mentoring for research program, the scholars have the possibility to carry out an environmental sustainability initiative. So that is that in a nutshell, what we hope to achieve with the environmental education program. At this point, I'll hand over to Maureen to kick us off with a brief intro about house stories, and then we can have the students present their group exercise.
Okay.
I'll stop sharing so that you can take over.
Stop sharing, then I can share. Okay. All right. Let's see. Let's try again. Okay. And can everyone see the screen?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay. To the students, and I think I had a chance to speak with your teachers about a month ago, and I've had a chance to speak mostly with Sonma and her team, and I think you're lucky to have such brilliant and dedicated people to as your teachers. So please take advantage of that, and I'm very happy to be part of the group here. So I'll get started. House Stories is, as I said, I develop programs for kids to get engaged with the built environment. And one program that we talked about with your teachers was called Urban Engineers, where we have used the built environment as a framework for environmental education. So it's a nice way perhaps to kick off an introduction to ideas about careers and possibilities and directions for the students in the future. So here, actually, let me take, there's something, 1 second. You can't, just 1 second here. Okay. All right, so before, I think the most important thing to remember is to ask questions and to think about systems. So whenever you get confused or don't really know where the answer is, ask questions, and they can be questions you might think are dumb or not, or but no question is stupid. And always ask the questions and always think, how is this connected to something else, possibly? So even when you say, what is a city, or what does a city do, or why is something happening here? Keep asking the questions and keep thinking about systems. And on a big scale, and this relates also perhaps to the question that Sonma mentioned about resources and development index. This is just an example from a news story that we appear on the BBC, and the issue of construction sand being taken from rivers, which is being exported all around the world. And because of growing construction, cities are being built. Also, at the same time, it's causing environmental problems. It's causing flooding. It's causing malaria, mosquito outbreaks because of the disruption of the ecosystem where they're taking the sand, and then it's causing social problems, et cetera, et cetera. So the link is here if you'd like to look, but here again, it's a question, but here we have to ask the question, well, how is building my city in the capital affecting people in the hinterland or the agricultural land, as we'll look at later. So the framework that I've given is perhaps just a way to start the discussion with students, and I'll hopefully we'll learn from your presentations. But the idea that your city is in this framework here, if you can see, I don't know if my pointer is pointing, but on the left side of the graphic, you see the ideas about climate, geography, and resources. So these are facts, observable, natural facts that are in your surroundings. However, we will be impacting them as we make decisions about density, mobility, and lifestyle. So if you look at the right side of the wheel, and in a way, if we start to think about these items as overlapping, and when we ask questions, so we might come back to this as one tool of many. You might come back to this framework to start to understand where interconnections might be. So I don't want to, let's see, I don't want to take up too much time here. Have you heard of the Sustainable Development Goals from the UN? And we talk about building sustainable communities. However, all human activity is interacting with the natural environment. So when you want to talk about environmental education, what are our lifestyles? How are we commuting? What is our infrastructure? How are we taking care of our wastewater? All of these things will be impacting. So again, it's a system. So we can't look at one thing in isolation. We have to look at it as how things are interconnected. And these goals are great, but when you want to get down to thinking, we propose to have our thought model to help organize your ideas. And I'm not sure if you had a chance to look, but here is a sample of an arid city, so a city in the desert. What are the resources that are there fine naturally well. You have little water, you probably can't grow too much food, you have a solar energy. And I think if someone would put back the map of Africa where she said you had wind energy in this corner and you had geothermal down near Madagascar and everything, actually you could apply this framework, maybe looking across different geographical areas in the continent to see which resources are naturally there, optimally used, and of course, how will your settlement patterns, you're living there, be it rural or urban, affect the use thereof. You can even look at it on Mars. So I won't keep too much of your time because I know I'd like to get to hear what the students have. I just wanted to let the students know that the framework is something that you can use to organize a presentation or a way of talking about the issues that you're working on, and that for each of these streams you should develop a big goal or a picture or a value that you understand is important. Like, I want to conserve water. I want our waste to be taken care of. I want to ensure that we can grow food for my family and my generations to come. So these are big picture and values that you can identify using this framework, and then work towards that as you gain knowledge. And then the other question, just the other item always to remember, is that adaptation is an important factor to think about. Nothing stays the same forever. I'm reading the pink part here. The more challenges you tackle as a class or as your student, the more resilient your city grows. So as you are looking at environmental challenges that you observe in your location, and I know the students are working in two very different types of locations, so I'm really looking forward to hearing what they have to say, and perhaps we'll talk about that a little bit. Yes, and always remember to tell your story. Use creative means to get people interested, and don't be afraid to make prototypes and from whatever things that you might have. These are some kids at a school in Houston, Texas. Yeah, that's about it. That's all I have to say. So I hope that's. I'll share back the screen.
Thank you very much for giving us that clear explanation. And it was really very interesting that we went through that urban indigenous framework. And so I'm also looking forward to what the students have come up with. Mada International College, are you ready to present what you have? So you're sharing your screen now, we see it. Perfect.
This is what we came up with, Green City. So we're building an environmentally friendly city, and from every indication it is possible, I'll say it like that, it's possible to create an environmentally friendly city. So what is a green city? That's the first thing we should talk about when we talk about a green city. So this is a city which takes care of its inhabitants, responding to its needs and equally respecting nature and preserving it. So that's what we can call a green city, because a green city is an interaction of living things. It's an interaction of living things such as us and the nature around us. We are interacting with the nature and with ourselves. So this is it. And is it possible for a green city to exist? Yes, it is. It is done by, a green city is created by the participation of all inhabitants, everyone giving a helping hand to preserve it and protect nature. As you can see, the background is a young man that's on the street. One of us decide to protect nature and to give a helping hand into creating a green city, then it's going to be possible to make our city a living place. And we have a catalog of a green city. It was designed by the students of Mada. So this is a green city that has been designed to have a forest, a farmland, and houses that are going to be powered by solar energy, septic tanks to produce biogas for home cooking, and we have the roads that are going to have hydraulic energy receptors so as to capture energy and to keep it for further use. Yeah, so we are having the forest here. They're going to be having solar panels on the roofs. We have the blue here is the biogas area, and then this is the road that's going to be having hydraulic receptors to trees for further use. So all of this is to make us a little more green. Okay, so there are the things that we thought about a city. In the city, we have people living in, and we have the things are needed to keep human beings alive, keep plants alive, and all the rest. So if we can have a green city without living things, so we have this as a plan of what is needed to be alive. Like we need to have water, you need to have light, sunlight, and all the rest. So next, we try to give a sample of an inhabitant's schedule on what he's going to be doing on a daily day-to-day life. So what he's supposed to be doing, the kind of things they can do, and how it's going to impact the green city. It is displayed there, the movement from home to work, and from work back home, and all what you do in between the times. You have things and aspects to consider when you live in a green city. What happens with the person who lives in this kind of society? We try to put it in a ball. Imagine someone that lives in this kind of society. What are the things we are supposed to consider, the aspects? Like in the city, the duties of the person in the city and all of that. It is in relation to with our next slide, responsibilities and duties. This is a sample of the responsibilities and duties of each inhabitant for himself and towards his environment equally. So what you're supposed to do personally to keep the city a green one, and what you're supposed to do as a government or as a city to keep everything. So personally and in the general aspects. We also have a map of our school, how our school looks like from each class to like detail. The use of biogas is you cannot just be emulating it without explaining what it is. So for a greater comprehension, biogas can be created out of biodegradable waste products. The fact is every living thing produces waste. Thus, that never-ending waste cycle can be used to produce biogas, which will at all the same time limit the rate of dirt in the city. And in terms of mobility, it helps eradicate the mentality of always carrying gas bottles across the town to be refilling it. It will bring revenue to the government in that as they supply the gas in underground iron pipe channels to each and every house of population will pay taxes. For the mobility problems, uses the factor of climate and geographical location as advantage for a faster production of the biogas with our basic resources. So that's a little bit of the use of biogas in my green city. We have the use of rain in my green city. Okay. In my green city, we thought about using rain differently as it usually goes. But this around, we talked about rain migration season per year. Thus, for that rain pipes, for that rain pipes can be used for a fast flow of rainwater, and at the lower part of the pipes, turbines can be placed such that they turn and produce kinetic energy in moving objects, that is energy in moving objects, which will be later transformed and stored in the form of electricity into batteries for further use. So we also talked about the secondary use of roads migrantity. The fact that we have cars on our highways is an advantage if it is seen in a good angle. Sensors which are actually used in calculating the mass of cars and trucks can now be used to track gravitational potential energy and kinetic energy. Potential energy, I would like to say, energy which is possessed by an object because of its position under gravity, and thermal or heat energy from the friction produced by the cars and the road, later transformed to electricity and stored for further use also. And lastly, I would say let's strive to make all places in the world environmentally friendly. And it was done by the MIC students, Mada International College. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sheila, on behalf of the Mada International College students. That was really nice. I can see you spent quite some time, you thought through it, and you came up with what a picture of your green city should be, and you came up with some ideas that I hadn't thought would be there, like using the hydraulic, the energy from the cars to create energy for your city. So I'll let Maureen provide any question or feedback that she has to you.
Oh, okay. So directly, yes. Yeah, like you were urban engineers there. I really like the creativity of how you thought about what's existing and how can you turn that into something that you can take advantage of. And not only, for example, like with the biogas, even thinking about that might be a taxable system, and you're looking, so going from the natural system to the waste system to the urban infrastructure system to the policy system. And I think that's really awesome. And with the plan as well. Yeah, I don't know, were there any challenges that you found while you were working on this? What did you find was the hardest part for yourselves?
The hardest part for this is to check the feasibility of what we are talking about. Check if what we are talking about is not just all about the dreaming of something that is like in the movie. We had to go into the details and check if what we are seeing, the perspective we are looking up to, and what we are dreaming for our cities in the whole wide world, is it feasible? Can we do it? Can we attain it? And we had to check detailedly, and we found that it is possible, because with us, we have impossible in a dictionary. So we have a way, we can do it. Everything is possible, and we checked it, and we can do it. That was a little bit the hardest part, but we have done it. We made it.
Awesome. Well, that's what I love about the thinking as an engineer, or you have to just take a leap and do your research and come up with a solution and present it and interact with people. So I would encourage you to take advantage of the awesome network that that the organization provides. If there are other mentors or people out there that you can reach out to look at some of these things more specifically, what is feasible, and maybe you have something that you can work on to help and work with your community. So I think that's definitely reach out. You have an international network of really well connected and super smart people. So I encourage you to do that. And then the other thing I would just say is, as I said at the end of my talk, I think the most one of important thing to think of is you have your presentation and your solution, and then you can always like look at it from a different perspective and say, well, let's go to a different stakeholder. Like it would be interesting what another stakeholder might think, and then be it maybe someone in the policy, someone in the local government or something like that, and then also think about the idea of adaptation. So if there are big challenges that you might face or shifts that you think might happen in that location in the future, how would your idea respond to that, and how might you adapt it? And then also always keep your ideas and big ideas and values. So you said that at the very beginning. It takes care of its inhabitants, respect nature, and we are living things, and the things living there that are non-human are also living things. So I think that's awesome. I'm thank you very much. Thank you. If you have any questions for me, but I think that was a great presentation.
Thank you. I agree. It was a great presentation. We will take more questions at the end, and I think we also want to hear, depending on time, a little more about what you learned in the process of coming up with your ideas. So, URDT Girls School in Kagadi, Uganda. Are you ready to share with us what you have?
Our vision is have a healthy environment, maintain it at 100% at the scale, community, regional and national level. At the school, that is URDT Girls School, community, Kagadi Town, regional, that is the Nora region and Alphatine region, and the national level is Uganda, the country at large. Currently, that is the country reality. We have environmental conservation practices in place. Some environmental laws available, obeyed by the citizens, not 100%, and then there's some part of deforestation in place. That is because of industrialization and commercial farming in the region. We have there are some action steps we have to support, and they are supposed to be done so that we can achieve our vision, that is having a healthy environment, maintained at 100% at the school, community, regional and national level. First and foremost, the first action step, we must make more research about the environment. We have to make more research because currently we have some information about the environment that we need to make more research about what the main reasons are that we are hindering our country from having its environment not healthy at 100%. Then we have some percentage healthy, but it is not at 100%. And therefore, we need to make more research about that. That the accountable, the senior first development students, and the students, we must sit down with that on 24th of November 2019. The second action step we must do is sensitizing the community members. This is done through MTT and mass media. The MTT, that is the news dance and the drama, it can be done by the environmental lab and mass media. That is the accountable. The accountable is the environmental lab, the hazard and the accountable is the community. It's URDT Girls School, and the due date is 23rd of April 2020. We also have practice agroforestry, and that is the community members, both in the Kagadi, the Albertine region, and the country at large, because agroforestry that is the planting of trees, maintaining these trees by breathe within the atmosphere, breaks up the carbon dioxide that will be dumped into global warming, and that will lead to a healthy environment through agroforestry. The trees after ions from the environment and we can get food from them that is multi-purpose. And the accountable is the community members to do that, and the due date is 15th of August 2020. We also have to design the strict laws. We have to design the strict laws as the last action step, and by the end of this, we shall have obtained our vision that is having a healthy environment, maintained at the 100% at the school, community, regional, and national level. The accountable of designing the strict laws is the commissioner, and to be the one to take action such that the people can obey, and for this time they have to keep our environment clean. The strict laws are against discarding the waste materials anywhere, and also stopping people from distracting the environment by deforestation. And the student is 25 or
So, sorry, because of the limited time, if you don't mind, if we can pause it at this point, because it was a bit difficult to pick out all the words. So if you don't mind, then we can pause it at this point and get the summary at the end, right?
From a brief comment perspective, I think what I understood with the plan, it looked very ambitious and well, because we could see the screen with the table of the plan, and you're awesome. And I hope that maybe think about what are tools that you can use so that when you go to speak to the set where you say, for example, on 7th of December, sensitization of community members. And you're asking the government about resettlement and these things. So, you know, how do you communicate those challenges or problems, and how can you develop a story around that? And I would just maybe advise, I mean, take it if you want or not, but I would think that that if you could use something like the framework to help define where different action areas are, like very specific, and then what the outcomes and maybe how they affect and impact other things, then that could help be a communication tool as you go talk to stakeholders. That's I think, and don't hesitate to reach out to other experts that can fill in information pieces that you might not know. And yeah, sometimes we think the problem is in one area, but it might be being caused by like 2 or 3 other factors. So I would encourage you also to think about the system again, and where is the degraded environment issue coming from? Because I'm sure it's probably coming from many different factors, and that's a learning process for everybody. So I think this is really good luck. I don't know if Mr. Charles has any comment on that, or the students.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I didn't really hear her present, but I'm looking at this, and it looks very ambitious.
Yes, it's indeed an ambitious target. I think probably we'll need a follow-up conversation to see how we're going to carry on the action steps. Due to time, we will have to proceed to Stephanie's presentation. I will stop sharing now so that you can take over.
Hello.
Okay, I think I'm ready.
Yes, please proceed, Stephanie.
Okay. Hello again, everybody. That was delightful for me to see your faces all the way across the world and to know that we're all working together to just live a more environmentally friendly lifestyles and to do work in our community. So thank you so much for just your time and your effort and your passion for this. Let's see. So you can see my screen. Is that?
We can see it.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I want to start by explaining the theme of my presentation, which is regeneration. And you can see here that I have crossed out the word sustainability, not because sustainability should not be a goal, but when we are referring to our ecosystems on planet Earth, I think that we need to use this term regeneration. And the reason for that is because for the past few centuries, really, humans have been degenerating the health of our ecosystems. So we've been decreasing biodiversity, decreasing the health of our ecosystems, decreasing ecosystem carrying capacity over time. And so if many of our ecosystems are degraded or degenerated, it doesn't really make sense for us to sustain them. Sustainable means to maintain the health of something over time. So if you have a degraded ecosystem, instead of sustaining it in a degraded state, instead what I think we need to be doing is regenerating. So regenerating means to increase the health of an ecosystem, to increase biodiversity, to increase resilience and the capacity of that ecosystem to withstand and recover from disturbances like floods and droughts and fires. So regeneration is the theme of my talk today, and I'm going to be talking about things we can do in our agricultural systems that can help to regenerate the planet and to heal the earth. I'm going to start, before I talk about agriculture directly, by doing a quick review about soil. So you've probably learned about soil in the past, but I want to review this so that we can get kind of a foundation of understanding. So soil is really where the magic happens. This is the foundation of all ecosystem health, is in soil. And soil, as we know, is made up of 4 different components. The sand, silt, and clay are the mineral components. They come from the rocks in the area. And all soil has some combination of percentage of air and water in it. And then the smallest but the most important piece here is the soil organic matter. Okay, so soil organic matter is a small percentage, like I said, but really important, and it makes up the living and dead matter that's in the soil. So this includes the living roots and the organisms in the soil, so living roots from plants and trees, also worms, bacteria, fungi. The organic matter also includes just the dead stuff that's lying on the ground and actively decomposing. And then it also includes humus, which is kind of a stable form of organic matter. It has a lot of carbon in it. Carbon is the building blocks of life. All plants and animals, humans are made from carbon. So carbon is a good thing. And what we want is lots of carbon in our soil. And that organic matter has a lot of carbon in it. So soil organic matter is really important. And it actually matters quite a lot how much soil organic matter is in the soil. So you can see on this image to the right, we have soil with lots of mineral content, sand, silt, and clay, and a very small amount of organic matter. And then the capacity of that soil to hold air and water is quite less than the image on the left, which looks like much healthier soil. A lot more plant matter growing here. There's more soil organic matter and therefore greater capacity to hold air and water, which makes it much easier to grow plants. Okay, this is important because when we have lots of soil organic matter, water that falls on the ground or runs across the land can soak into the ground and infiltrate and absorb. And this allows plants to grow. If we have compacted soil with low soil organic matter, we're going to get a lot of runoff and evaporation. We don't want to lose the water that falls on our land or runs across our land to runoff and evaporation, except of course during floods, which does happen. Soil with high organic matter can actually absorb more water during floods. And then if we shape the land correctly, we can push that water into areas where we can use it later during periods of drought. So soil organic matter is really important in terms of water absorption. So what we're going for is a very carbon-rich soil. This is what will help our ecosystems to start to regenerate and also to become more resilient to things like floods and droughts, because a carbon-rich soil can hold on to more water and absorb more water during floods and also hold on to water more during droughts. So this is where it can help us with resiliency during climate change. This all has quite a lot to do with photosynthesis. And I'm sure you've learned about photosynthesis. This is just a basic, simple diagram showing how plants take in carbon dioxide. They use energy from the sun and they make glucose, which is what they use to grow their structures. And then of course they release oxygen into the air. All of this requires water as well, which they get from the roots. But there's something missing from this diagram, something really important. What's missing is that these liquid sugars that are created during photosynthesis. So as the tree is taking in carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, they're creating these carbohydrates, which are sugars, basically, and they're using them to grow, but they're also pumping these liquid sugars down into the soil. They're pumping these sugars down into the soil where there is a big exchange happening, okay? So these sugars go down through their roots into the soil and they are shared with microbes. Microorganisms such as bacteria and fungi that are living in the soil, should be living in the soil. And these are good microorganisms. I think we often think of bacteria and fungi as being bad microorganisms, but there are many good microorganisms and they should be living in the soil right alongside those plant roots. And those microbes are making nutrients available for plants. This is essential. The microbes are making these nutrients available to the plant so that they can take them up by their roots and use them in their growth. So plants are trading carbohydrates that they have made through photosynthesis for minerals and water, okay? They're trading. This is a symbiotic relationship that is beneficial for both the plants and the trees as well as the microorganisms in the soil. How does this happen? Okay, so down underground in the area where the roots are growing, we call that the rhizosphere. There are lots of bacteria and fungi living. And so on the right here, you can see kind of an enlarged photo of a root. That orangish brown thing is a root growing down into the soil. The little red squiggly lines are bacteria, and then the white strands are some strands of fungi. Those are, we call them fungal hyphae. And what they're doing is they are bringing nutrients to the roots, and the bacteria and the fungi are using the sugars produced by the tree. So this is happening down in the soil, or should be happening down in the soil. The fungi, we also call them mycorrhizal fungi, actually, you can see in the picture here, increase the capacity of the roots 1,000-fold in terms of its ability to access water and nutrients in the soil. So these are really important organisms, and we need to be fostering them in our soils. Now, these fungi also do something that's really beneficial. They create a protein, a sticky substance called glomalin. And this helps the soil to kind of clump together. It's like a glue. It helps the soil to clump together into these aggregates. And this allows for more water and air in the soil. So what we're trying to create down in our soil are carbon-rich soils, humus, plus the glomalin, which is the glue that kind of clumps it all together. We call these soil aggregates. These soil aggregates can absorb and hold more air and water. So this is really beneficial for plant growth and for just the basis of regeneration of our ecosystems. Okay, so I want to move on to the agricultural practices that regenerate ecosystems and create resilience. I just want to check in here. Are you still able to hear me fine and see the slides?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So I want to review, I'm going to just share with you 3 agricultural practices, systems that can help to regenerate our ecosystems and create resilience against climate change. There are many others, but these are 3 that kind of speak to me the most. So permaculture is practiced all around the world. It's not a new practice. It's kind of a collection of things that people have been doing around the world for decades, sometimes centuries. But it is a way, it's a process really of designing agricultural systems that use nature as a guide. And the goal is to, of course, provide for humans, but also to help care for the land. So you can see in this picture here, there's trees and shrubs and plants of all sizes, and it looks a little bit more like a forest than maybe it would look like a farm. So in a way, in this way, it's designed after nature. And I picked out some pictures just from the internet of permaculture projects in Africa, just so you can kind of see it, get a sense of what it looks like. This can be practiced anywhere, this design process. In fact, I'll share a resource with you later of somebody who practices permaculture on a balcony in her off her apartment in the city. So you don't need lots of land for this, but of course it does work well for smaller homesteads and subsistence farms. And here's are just some of the practices that you might use. It's important to shape the land in order to harvest water. So again, we want water that falls or runs across the land to stay on the land, except for during floods, in which case we want to redirect it to an area where we can use it for later. I love permaculture because it can be used anywhere. The idea is that you just make use of what's available to you and take advantage of natural processes and take advantage of the pollinators and the predators and create a system that can sustain itself. It's important to include a diversity of trees and shrubs and other perennial plants. And you can choose those that are adapted to your area, of course. Anything that can help to provide food or fiber or fuel for you and for the local wildlife. And then integrating small animals can help you to make use of waste. So I loved that idea of using waste to create biogas. You can also use waste to feed your livestock, and then of course you can use their waste, the manure, to return nutrients to the soil. So permaculture practices are a way to kind of mimic nature and also provide for humans in all kinds of settings. So that's permaculture. The next practice I want to talk about is regenerative agriculture. These are practices that restore degraded land and help to improve the health of the soil by increasing the carbon content. So again, referring back to my lesson on soil, we really want to increase the carbon content of our soils, and this will allow it to hold more water over time. It also is a way to take carbon out of the atmosphere where it is causing a problem and put it somewhere where it can actually be of benefit. So there are some general principles to regenerative agriculture. You want to disturb the soil the least amount possible. You want to maintain living roots in the ground as much as possible. You want to protect the soil with some type of, here it says soil armor, but what we mean by that is a mulch or a cover crop. Integrating animals is another principle, and then finally increasing biodiversity. And we mean above and below the ground. So above the ground with plants and animals of all different kinds, and then also below the ground with bacteria and fungi of all different kinds. So these are the 5 principles, and I'll just talk a little more about some of the things that you can do to be more regenerative in an agricultural system. When you till, tilling is something that farmers have been doing all over the world for a long time, and it helps to remove weeds and kind of prepare the soil for planting. But when you do that, you're breaking up all of those little fungal networks, all of those little strands of fungus in the soil that is helping to bring water and nutrients to the plants. And it takes time for those to recover. You're also turning over the soil and allowing it to decompose and return carbon dioxide, CO2, into the atmosphere, as well as allowing water to evaporate. So the soil here on the left is bare, it has been tilled, and this is causing us to lose carbon and to lose water from the soil. On the right, however, you can see that plants have been, are growing within the dead stubble of plants from the previous growing season. And so this, we're not disturbing the soil when we avoid tilling, and we're covering the soil and protecting it from erosion. And this allows carbon dioxide and water to be absorbed through photosynthesis, and then those carbon sugars push down into the soil. And then also the water is able to absorb and hold on to what the soil is able to absorb water over time. So tilling versus no tilling is something that you can consider. Also, the planting of annual crops versus the planting of perennial crops. So you can see on the left here, annual crops need to be planted and kind of tilled up every year. And this causes a lot of disturbance. And so when you do this, you no longer have living roots in the ground, and the soil will be bare for a portion of the year. However, when you plant perennial crops, and specifically a diversity of perennial crops, they grow for many years, and they maintain their roots in the soil, and they cover the soil and protect it from erosion. And this allows us to absorb, sequester carbon from the atmosphere down into the soil, and also, of course, hang on to water. So perennial, sort of a multiple species of perennials growing together would be considered a more regenerative way than just planting annuals. Of course, you can integrate annuals into any system. Much of what we eat are annual plants. Another thing to consider is what we do with organic matter and waste. So any plant or animal material, if we send it to a landfill, it decomposes there in a sort of anaerobic setting, and and that just puts greenhouse gases into the air. So carbon dioxide, CO2, and methane, CH4, are greenhouse gases that just are a byproduct of decomposition of organic matter in our landfills. However, if we were to take those organic materials and turn them into compost, and then we spread them onto our rangelands or agricultural lands, we can add carbon to the soil. And as we know, soils that are high in carbon can absorb more water, and this allows for more plant growth.
Sorry, Stephanie, just to tell you that we have 5 minutes. And
okay,
I
can go through this. The final practice, regenerative agricultural practice I want to share is called managed grazing. So this is when you mimic the habits of grazing animal herds to improve the health of rangelands and decrease desertification. This little image here kind of just very simply describes what happens in managed grazing. So instead of putting animals out into one big pasture, you divide it up into smaller paddocks. And then you put the group of animals into one paddock at a time. And they do impact the area quite heavily with their grazing and the trampling of the grasses and their manure. But then once the area has been sufficiently grazed, you can move them to the next paddock, and you will allow the grazed paddock to rest completely. And this really helps with regeneration of grasslands and rangelands. I like to tell the story of the bison. In North America, we used to have millions of bison on our grasslands. Unfortunately, that's no longer the case, but they would graze in these big herds, And whenever a predator would come or the flies would get too bad, the herds would move on to another area of the grassland and leave behind this area, and they wouldn't return until it had fully recovered. So this is a natural process. The bison and the grasses evolved together, sort of meeting each other. We like to say here, it's not the cow, it's the how. So if you put a lot of cows in a concentrated area, you're just going to get lots of greenhouse gases and concentrated manure. But if you put them out into the grasslands and allow them to do this managed grazing, then you can actually improve the health of the grasslands instead of just adding to pollution. Here's another image: overgrazing and over-resting of grasses. So if you eat too much or they don't eat enough in a big pasture, that can just be degenerative, whereas the planned grazing, the managed grazing, again, can really help to restore grasslands. Here's an example in South Africa where the rancher on the left just put the animals out to graze in the pastures, and the grasslands are turning into desert, whereas the rancher on the right used these managed grazing in order to maintain the grasslands, improve the health of the grasslands. Okay, so I'm going to end here with this, with my final thoughts about the importance of these microbes, these microorganisms in the soil, the bacteria and the fungi that help to create these carbon-rich soil aggregates that allow us to absorb more water. So if we have healthy soil microbiome, we can have healthy plants and animals, which leads to healthy humans and, of course, a healthy planet. So the magic happens in the soil. If we can improve our soil health, then we can feed ourselves and care for the planet at the same time. So I'll stop there and see if there's any questions. It was a quick explanation of some of the things I've been learning about lately, but hopefully it can help with your studies.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. I think I've learned quite a bit here, and I like the idea of regeneration versus sustainability, that we should put things in the right condition and then we should sustain that rather than go straight to sustaining things in case they're not exactly how they should be. And
exactly.
It also links to what, well, the Green City of Mada mentioned having forestry there, so maybe they might consider having that also in their city, versus the URDT that is in the rural area, a lot of focus on agriculture as well. Hopefully they have picked one or two things from this. I would open it up for Q&A. Do we have any questions coming from the audience?
Yeah, hello. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe while the students are still trying to prepare their question, I appreciate all the contributions. Perhaps I'll be able to make some comments afterwards. But quickly, as a question to Mada School, I saw that they have quite a big, very inspiring idea. But I want to ask, of course, that's quite big for now. I was going to ask two questions. One is that, is there a part of this that they could, out of this big idea, could they pick up a part of it, like a fraction of it, as a commitment towards building a green city? They might not be able to, of course, do what everything they are presented, but could there be a part, it could just be the behavioral pattern that the student could pick up as a commitment, personal commitment from the project they did. And then secondly, perhaps Maureen might be able to help to respond to this. I saw that in the design they made, the forest was at the outermost layer, then followed by the farm, and then the built area. I was thinking the same volume, the same space that would have been occupied around the same radius from the center of the city, is it not better off if they have the forest area, the vegetation distributed across the city instead of just around one area? Maybe you can help to address that. And then I think I'll be fine, and then maybe I can make some comment later on. Thank you.
Well, I think actually now you see where Stephanie and where I'm talking about can kind of come full circle and feedback to the team. So for example, the idea of permaculture or the ideas about soil, usually a city, when you're just, there's multiple issues. For example, if you're just paving the city with roads and things for concrete and urban, you're inhibiting the absorption of water, and then you're also increasing heat. And it's obviously also not very comfortable for the people. They're not having this experience of the freshness and the connection with nature that they can have, and oxygen, all these things that the trees provide. So I would think that there's permaculture ideas that you can use from what she presented to go back maybe and take those and think about how you might rearrange the organization of the city using some of those kinds of principles, because as they noted, it was nature, I guess you could call it your motto, take care of its inhabitants, and specifically taking care of living things. And so that might be one aspect that they could go back into their design and think about how would they arrange it so that every community member has the chance. Maybe they can community gardens, or there's all kinds of opportunities there to think about that. So yeah.
Any response from Mada?
So what we're already doing to implement Green City, we use the tires, the worn-out tires of cars, and we try to use it for decoration, where we plant our trees inside, and then we also take compost and we try to make usage of it. We also are planning for an outreach, to clean our environment, take care of and sensitize also the people around, because there's no way suffice cleaning, because you can clean and then later on they don't know how to maintain. So we have to sensitize them on how it happens and what to do, how to do it, and the advantage and the disadvantages of it. So that is what we are working up to. And for the biogas and the solar panels, especially the rain too, it is very feasible. In fact, that is even, those are part of the things that we think on the quick aspect, you can just do it very fast. It can be done very quickly to resolve the problems of our community.
Thank you very much for that.
I think just one more thing. For the project, for the tires that you're already using to address environmental issues, and for the outreach, please carry us along. Let's know when you're able to do it. You can take pictures and do a little writing. We'll be happy to share on our website and social media platform. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. We are going to do that. We are going to make sure we take pictures and we send it to you.
Okay.
Great. Do we have any comments or questions from URDT, either on Stephanie's presentation about soil health or other discussions?
Yes, can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead, Charles.
Yeah, we have discussed a number of issues here, but my concern is one, how practical are these things? Yeah, it's easy to talk about so many things, but when it comes to the practical part of it, we get issues. Then I also raise another strategic concern. After this webinar, we've discussed so many things, so many solution strategies. What is going to follow next? Are we going to sit on our slides and our material and just do nothing? Is it just a matter of having the webinar and talk? So what is ISNAD-Africa going to help this congregation to move on and make sure that the key pertinent issues discussed here make sense in the practical realm?
Okay. Can I quickly respond to that?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, that's why I asked the question. The question I just asked now addressed half of part of what you said, which is about breaking the big complex, the big picture, into small things that they can handle for now. And you can see that Mada School, for instance, in Cameroon, are already making plans on this. Actually, they discussed about the tires with me when I traveled there. And beyond that, we're also making efforts on collaborations to get supports from development organizations. And as soon as once we are able to get support, we can look at any of the ideas that are very practical that we can handle, and then we can support them. And more, beyond that also, like I mentioned, any school that is able to come up with an idea of things they can also do on their own, we're happy to share. And like you know, our website is visited at least from 20 countries of the world every day. So stakeholders come every time to see. Once they see, like for instance, on this program that we are doing currently, we have been in communication with the United Nations organization that was interested in picking it up, but up to now it's not finalized. So there are a lot of efforts around that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tony, for that comment. I'll just reiterate what you've said. We're open to, one of the ideas behind it is to get the students coming up with their solutions and their ideas, and then we're picking out what they can immediately do in their communities. And Mada has already mentioned what they will do with their outreach and with sensitizing their community. We would like to hear from URDT. We saw the vision, all you want to do with the stakeholders you want to hold accountable in the government and other areas. But if there is any specific other topics that you would want to implement in your community where you require support, we can start that conversation afterwards, after this webinar, to see what is practical, what can be done, how can we support it. And of course, we will promote, we would share whatever has been implemented, we would share it and create more awareness to the general public and to our network members. So is there any other questions, or we can go around to take feedback? Very quickly, from the schools, either URDT or Mada, you can go first to tell us what have you learned from this program and what is your takeaway, the key takeaways, and how you think this has benefited you.
So I would like to go first. So from the presentation of our fellow school URDT, we've learned so many things, and one of the things we've learned is, one thing that shocked me actually is that to attain this, they give the truth as it is, that we have to give strict rules. The government, on the side of the government, we need to put strict restrictions, because as we all know, human is attracted to the wayward side, always trying to go on the wrong side. But if we are guided, then we can go the correct side and we can entertain as a green city. So that is one of the parts that I think we are going to stress on our side, trying to put strict rules so that from the students to the teachers, and implementing it in our societies as we are going more, when we try to share those rules and try to give the benefits of those rules to the people, that run back down to sensitizing. We think we can attain the goal of URDT of 2020, 21st December, making everything environmentally friendly. So that is one of the things we learned, and I think that's the key factor of everything.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other students?
Can somebody respond from Mada School on what they learned while developing their projects? Because they went out of their way from the normal reading of mathematics and English to be able to develop their projects? What are the things you learned that you gained to your knowledge while developing your projects?
Hello. During this project, we had a lot of things we came across. So one of the things we learned was that we are part of nature, and if we don't treat nature the way it's supposed to be treated, we are betraying nature, and betraying nature is betraying ourselves. So we learned that we do not only have to make our environment sustainable, not only for us, but for the future generation. Because if we use everything up now, the future generations will not have anything in the future. So we learned that we should not we should use it sustainably. We should not exaggerate the way we use our resources. So we have taken all these things into consideration, and we are promising, we have projects that we're going to do to make sure that we are part of those who make the environment sustainable, not those who destroy it. We want to be part of those who make the environment friendly. We want to be an example. I mean, it's not, we cannot just be saying it without doing it. As they say, actions speak louder than words. So we are going to do everything we can to make sure that we're an example, to show that we can also make our environment sustainable. Yes, we can. That's what Mada is all about. Proving. We don't just speak.
Impossible is not an addiction.
Yeah, impossible is not an addiction. We don't just speak. We show the actions, and we hope that you're going to help us, support us in everything we need, because we are part of you. We are part of nature, and we are looking up to supporting nature in every way we can. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. That's a very good comment. I believe Charles also has a comment. We'll take that one very quickly and maybe hear from Stephanie Warren before we round up, because we're out of time.
Yeah.
Charles, just 1 minute, please.
Yes, just talking about the issue of soil health. I would want we look at it in a broader sense of soil and land management. Soil and land management encompasses so many practices. Actually, we have another component, soil, land, and water management. And yes, I love a number of practices Dobby has suggested, but here in Uganda, there is one big concern. You seem to have only been on one side of organic agriculture. Yeah, but I want to say that, yes, as an agronomist, as an agricultural person, it is prudent that we make a little mix of both the organic practices and the inorganic practices. I'll give an example of soil nutrition. In our country, we see about 8 kilograms per hectare of nutrients being added in the soil, yet so many nutrients are being removed in the form of harvest, and farmers are not returning much. Yes, we can use the urban waste, but we are looking at issues of bulkiness, we are looking at issues of the attractiveness of those organic materials, urban waste, when transferring them to the rangeland. Yeah, so it's very key. Yes, we emphasize organic practices, agroecological practices, but also, yeah, surely we cannot completely put aside the conventional agricultural practices. For example, the use of mineral soil enrichments. Yes, and we are having that mix at URDT farm. Yeah, we promote more of organic, but we do not put aside completely the other conventional or the non-organic practices.
Thank you very much, Charles, for that feedback. And just to mention again that this recording is going to be available about probably around a week or so after this webinar, so that one can still reflect on it and you can still watch the videos and see the presentations. And I appreciate everyone joining and contributing to the discussion. Appreciate having the students' presentations, the ideas from Mada about Green City, and the vision which URDT has to improve environmental conservation in their community. I will follow up with you to see how those activities are going. And thank you very much. Really, there's a whole lot of knowledge that's been shared. And I think I'll give over to Adedoyin. I believe he has some words to share before we close.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for, to the speakers. Thank you to the students and the teachers that were behind all these efforts. We must especially appreciate two of our persons who have been behind the scene that work directly with the school. I'm speaking from Italy, someone speaking from the US. Victorine, I don't know why she's not showing up. Is she there? She's been very, very wonderful. She's the one waving there at the back. She's been very wonderful. Yeah, she's coming up. Yeah, I think she loves to be quiet. Really, she deserves to be celebrated on this. She's been working with them for several months in Mada School. I was there myself. And also Charles, that you see, he's talking about the school. I see he's there. Actually, he's one of us. So that's very wonderful. And I most appreciate sincerely my colleague, Soma. She's been behind all this back and forth email. She related with almost everybody here. I'm just meeting many of us for the first time. I must also mention that, Maureen, I love your presentation because you're talking about system thinking. Actually, my PhD is around that, so I understand quite well. Yeah, what I found looking at the whole presentation from the students, from the speakers, I find four things that are very critical. Number one is that the webinar and the program itself is driving critical thinking. The students are thinking on their own, beyond what they would have normally done with integrated science, elementary science, introtech, and all of those conventional courses. So, and more importantly, it also helps them to apply the current knowledge. I heard the young man from Mada School talking about potential energy. As he mentioned potential energy, I laughed because I learned that in secondary school. So they're using their STEM knowledge, the knowledge they've gathered in school, now bringing into environmental science, which is very wonderful. And Stephanie came up to build on what they already know, talking about photosynthesis, agriculture, and all of that. And when Maureen was going to come, she came up with now introducing new knowledge, which is an area that normally is not within school context. So 4 things. 1, the webinar is helping critical thinking, application of current and established knowledge, building on that same knowledge, and also introducing new knowledge, which I think honestly covers the 4 dimensions of learning. So I appreciate everybody for the contributions, and we definitely hope to continue this. We're in interaction with a number of organizations to see how we can take some of these efforts further. And if you have the time, you can visit our website. You see other programs that we're doing with universities, and that's already gotten some interest from international organizations. I want to see how we can take this further. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. If there's no other comments, then I would close the webinar and follow up with you all. At the end, we will share with you all the presentations and the documents that are associated with them. Stephanie's presentation as well, some additional documents that are going to be shared so that you can as well refer to it later. Stephanie, I don't know if you have final comments you want to give, and Maureen as well.
Sure. I would like to just say that a wonderful place to start is to just start growing your own food wherever you are with whatever resources you have. And when you do that well, you will help to be regenerating the environment, your local environment, and that can grow to bigger and bigger scales. But as we regenerate our ecosystems, we'll be able to just create more resilient communities so that we can adapt to the climate as it changes. So I just encourage everybody to grow some food wherever you are and whatever resources you have. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Stephanie. We appreciate having you here. Thank you very much.
Can I say one comment?
Yes.
So I just wanted to reiterate what Adedoyin mentioned. So I really like this crossing of knowledge, because this is what we need. And for Charles, I would like to say already right now, through this call, we've brought together 2 schools in 2 different countries in Africa. And how can even these schools interact with each other to help build this knowledge? And so as the young woman, I can see her she's in the camera here from Mada School, has a passionate voice, and she can also take that and communicate with the other schools. So I would encourage you all to do that and exchange your own knowledge, because it's all about behavior change and communicating with, talking with your communities, and maybe you have experiences that you can share with each other. And this way you also build a strong network amongst yourselves. So I think that's a good path for the future.
Thank you, Maureen, and thanks once again, everyone. I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening or the rest of your day, depending on your location, those in the US. And we'll keep in touch. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Yes. Awesome. Keep us posted. I want to see.
Sure.
Bye-bye.
Ça, c'est pas ce que t'imposes, mais c'est ce que tu voilà, c'est ça. Et du coup, ce que je mesure, c'est ce que j'impose, c'est 3 constants.